Start today. And Matteo, I'd just like to say I think you're a bit too bloody tall to be sitting in the row that you're in, lad. My view is slightly obscured of the screen. I'm not particularly happy with that. So next year when we come back, I'm thinking we need to raise the screen a little bit. Or maybe I need to wear high heels, but it's not going to help me sitting down the back here. Maybe I need to get a bigger bottom between now and next year. Or maybe not. Oh, right. I'll get up and I'll walk down. Mark has got his book in the back row here. He's writing down notes. I hope you're not writing down notes about what I said just then, Mark, because that's not going to be very helpful to you at all. He's gone old school. Some of us have got our laptops out. Who went for a run this morning or a little walk down the beach down here at good old Echo Beach? You did? Anyone else? I know it wasn't just me. I know I saw other people down there. And I did walk down that beach and I thought, my God, this really is the most beautiful morning. So blessed. The water was just reflecting. There was beautiful birds just coming in, and I felt like I should have been doing a Destination WA shoot this morning because it would have been the perfect morning for it. And then I thought about what we're doing today with our conference, and I reflected back. Last night we had a special get-together for our sponsors and our presenters. Thanks very much to the team at Canaccord for that. We were very impressed with the new location down the front. I think the last time I've been down the front here in Busselton for a meal, Loose Goose was the goose was still there, so it was great to see the new venue, and I was very impressed by your monogrammed napkins. They had their monogrammed napkins down there. I thought, my goodness, these guys are making a fabulous amount of money down here. James, the goose, sorry James, you're correct, the goose. I actually had a mate that was in maitre d' down there and he absolutely loved it. His best job he'd ever had. And I was thinking last night, we were talking about the interest in this area, this little region here, and I'm going slightly off tack because I was having a chat with you about your speech, so I might actually be quiet on that one because what I wanted to say is after we're having this in-depth discussion, so I'm going off patter. Right, a couple of things before we get started and I introduce you to everyone on stage. This wine here. If you would like to win a year's worth of this wine here, $1,000 worth of Talisman, you need to go and grab yourself a ball or balls. Multiple. The more balls you have, boys and girls, the more balls you have, the more chances you have of winning a year's worth of wine from Talisman. And that's thanks to our friends at Koo, thanks to Lockie and team. Lockie's actually in charge of all the brand management that you've seen for us for vertical events, but also for a lot of ASX listed companies. And I was having a chat with him yesterday about doing some stuff with my brand, and he said, come and chat to me. He said, if you've got a new innovation or something you need a brand, some sort of an idea for the website and all the marketing material, he's the boy to talk to. So not only could he be your new best friend with all this alcohol, he could also help you. If you're down here on a sea change, because I know not all of us have come down here to retire, we're just down here because we love it, and you've got a new business idea, then he may be able to help you get that digital footprint up and running as well. All right, would you like to hear what's happening today? Yes? All right, we're going to hear a little bit from, we've got, I think, more than 20 companies presenting again today, so we've got a lot to push through. As usual, I'll be very strict on the time. We have got 15 minutes for each of our presenters. I'll ring the bell at the 2-minute mark to go. I'll stand up at 1 minute, and again I'll walk across the stage and gently hug you if you refuse to get away from the microphone. We've got our morning tea break for 20 minutes. We've got a lovely lunch in the middle of the day, and we're finishing relatively early, just after 3ish. So it'll be a fairly early end to the day, but we're more than happy. Robert, James, I saw your name tag, and I know. Can you just change that today? So you all remember Jim down the front here, who's looking for friends from Perth. And so there is the opportunity. I don't know why. There is the opportunity to stay afterwards and have a couple of drinks, and we can have a chat and talk about what we have seen today. All right, officially welcoming us to the stage today. We've got the ladies are on parade up the front here this morning. I'd like to welcome Jane Tandy up the front from Canaccord Genuity. Jane is the Group Chief Operating Officer. She sits on the board of the Stockbrokers and Financial Advisors Association, which chairs their broking committee. She's also a mother to 3 young children and a very passionate advocate of women in the finance industry. Thank you so much for being here today, Jane, and thanks for coming on board with us for the event as well. Really appreciate it. Would you please make her welcome, everyone?
Thanks, Chrissy, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of Canaccord Genuity, I'd like to welcome you to day 2 of our Southwest Connect conference. It's been fantastic to see such a broad range of delegates embrace this conference, and what an incredible lineup of speakers we had yesterday, and today looks like it will be just as fantastic. I hope everyone enjoyed the networking drinks last night and got to interact with the companies that presented yesterday. And for those that attended our function, thank you so much for coming, and I hope the heads aren't too sore today. Mine's okay. We're very proud to be playing a role in bringing this event to the Southwest. Our team at Canaccord look forward to a continued partnership with Vertical Events in this and other events, and personally I can't wait to welcome interstate guests next year and really show off this beautiful part of WA. With the investment in the Busselton Airport and direct flights into Melbourne, let's hope that the borders open soon and we can see a new wave of tourists to the region. Although personally I'd prefer if the borders weren't open until after school holidays, because I already can't get a house anywhere over Christmas, unless you buy one, I think is the plan at the moment. Thank you again to Vertical Events, Chapter 1 Advisors, BDO, Atomic Group and Steiner Price Paganin for getting behind the event. And thank you most of all for the delegates. The conferences only really go ahead because of everyone who wants to attend. I'd like to now introduce you to Paul Howard, who's mining analyst at Canaccord Genuity. A trained geologist, Paul worked for 11 years in the mining sector for companies including Northern Star, St Barbara and Atlas Iron. After completing a Masters in Mineral Economics, he transitioned to the finance sector, or as we say, the dark side, as an analyst in 2016, and he was a very important hire for us as we bolstered our mining research team last year. He's our office Irish larrikin, and in his spare time he likes to cycle, spend time with his wife and 2 young boys, and is a celebrated pastry chef. This morning, Paul will be providing you with an update of the resources market and exploration themes. Please join me in welcoming Paul to the stage.
Thank you, Jane. Celebrated pastry chef. Yeah, a lot of truth in that one. Look, guys, delighted to be here to present again at one of these events. I'm going to sort of elaborate on some themes I've spoken about previously. Give a market update, look, the outlook, and just touch on some exploration trends. Hopefully this works. There we go. So disclaimers, you'll see a number of these, obviously yesterday and today. Look, don't take this as personal financial advice, I suppose, is the key thing here. But look, Canaccord is delighted to be the main sponsor here of the conference. Given I am a mining analyst, there will be a heavy bent on the resources sector in my presentation. Well, it'll be all skewed towards resources, let's say. But look, I just wanted to point out where Canaccord sits in the Australian Metals and Mining ECM League table. We continue to rank number 1 in Australia. This is the 12 months year to date, as of I think Sunday, and you can see Canaccord, again top of the table with some very large banks sitting below us. Obviously great in terms of value of deals done. But what I think is really important is if you look at the number of deals, 93 deals, that smashes out of the park relative to our peers and competitors, and that's just a real testament to the great bunch of guys and girls we have working at Canaccord across the country, and really shows our support for the junior space. That's a number of deals spread across a number of companies, many of whom are here at the conference this week. So really grateful, and I think it's a fantastic effort by the Canaccord team. So look, just touching on 2021 so far, the year's nearly over, but coronavirus, it still prevails, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And certainly globally, we see things returning to normal. So that's really positive, I think, for the year ahead. The year started off initially, we had a weak US dollar, but that seems to be leveling out now as the Fed sort of moves to that tapering expectation. Gold has been flat. Well, actually, it's been down 6% year to date in Aussie dollar terms, or US dollar terms, I should say. But we're very positive on gold, and we see sort of a renewed vigor in that as that hedge against inflation. I'll touch on that a little bit more later on. Most recently, we've seen rising energy costs impacting base metals, which has been a very exciting thing to watch. And obviously, the battery materials are certainly running. And we think we've had an inflection point in lithium. We've got a wonderful lithium coverage team based in Sydney, and they called the bottom of the market late last year. And we've seen prices certainly skyrocketing since then. And the chart on the bottom there just sort of highlights the various lithium products, and certainly a big inflection point since late last year. And then just a chart on top shows a number of commodities and gold. You'll see gold at the bottom there, relatively flat for the year, but the base metal's certainly running. And things like tin and cobalt have been running quite hard recently, and I think some of that's related to sort of geopolitical risk and certainly supply risk. There's just not a lot of cobalt and tin opportunities out there. So just moving on to gold. We're very bullish for gold. Matthew McConaughey, he's a great actor, but he's pretty short-sighted. Back in February 2020, he was pretty happy about himself, pretty happy with gold. In October 21, now he's a bit sad. But what's changed really, between those two timeframes? There we go. But nothing's changed. So gold is still 2,400 Aussie an ounce. Yet everyone was high-fiving themselves back in February 20, and then COVID hit, and then sort of now in October, there's a little bit of trepidation around gold. People are sort of less buoyant about it. But really, we probably need to take a wider view. We're in this is a bit of a delay here. Yeah. We've got to take a wider view. We're in the middle of a 10-year, at least a 10-year gold bull market. And sure, there's volatility. We've seen that last year with uncertainty around COVID. But the fact of the matter is gold is still very healthy and the trajectory is still looking very strong for gold. And we think there's a supportive macro backdrop to push gold higher, and I'll just touch on that now. Okay, so look, there's record fiscal and monetary stimulus ongoing. There's ultra low interest rates. In fact, it's actually negative real interest rates. We're seeing rising debt levels. And there is sort of inflationary concerns and gold as that hedge against inflation. And that's sort of been exacerbated by ongoing supply chain issues globally. But despite all of that, gold is still down, as I said, 6% year to date compared to other commodities and indexes. But we think it's at a turning point now. We've been sort of talking about gold continuing its ascendancy this year. We haven't quite seen it yet, but we think we're just on the cusp of that. And then just moving into base metals, started 2021 very well, driven by that surge in demand from particularly in China, and obviously that's strong market sentiment towards the EV space, and we sort of saw a lot of companies talking about that yesterday. And then most recently, we've seen these energy shortages and supply cuts in Europe particularly. And that's sort of really been impacting the commodity prices recently. And you sort of see that's year to date there, all in positive territory. In fact, all over 20% up, which is fantastic for those commodities. And obviously, we'll see the equities following very soon. And then just sort of delving into a couple of these base metals. Copper, we really like copper. We see favourable medium supply and demand fundamentals there. And it's really that movement in towards the EV space and obviously that acknowledgement and reliance on copper within that overall thematic. And just there's a lack of copper projects out there. I mean, as an analyst, I'm getting calls from funds saying, where do I get exposure to copper? What's some great up-and-coming copper projects? And the fact of the matter is there's not a lot out there. And so that's really putting a squeeze in that area. Okay, so copper, it's at all-time highs, which is fantastic to see. And there's potential for little blips and things to push it higher. And obviously there's clearly risk to the downside. So we saw the labour concerns in Peru and Chile early this year, and that was impacting supply of copper coming onto the market. That's been somewhat alleviated, but I suppose I'll highlight there's just risk for those little sort of short-term impacts on the copper price, and we see that particularly with strike action and those sort of things in South America. And then you've got the China Evergrande saga, let's call it, that's been played out in the last few weeks, and it seems to be somewhat alleviated. And we think that could impact to the downside demand for things like copper, but probably more so for iron ore and those sort of more bulk industrial construction materials, perhaps. But look, on inventories, copper inventories have shrunk 90% in the past 2 months on the LME warehouse. So, really favourable ingredients to push copper higher. It's at lowest since 1974, I'm told. And obviously there's a high energy use in the refineries and the smelters to produce it, so that's impacting supply coming online as well. But really it comes down to investor euphoria and just that desire to get exposure to copper. And you'll see that investor euphoria across a number of commodities. And that's certainly sort of reflected in conversations I'm having with fund managers and those sort of people. And zinc to a certain extent is also being impacted here. The supply concerns have pushed prices to the highest we've seen since 2007, and obviously inventory levels are very low as well. We heard Nurstar over in Europe shut 3 of its smelters or decreased capacity to 50% at its smelters, which is obviously impacting that supply. And then we believe Glencore is also going to do something similar very soon. So I think there's sort of perhaps more short-term impact on the zinc price. And you know, obviously we're at those levels now, which is very exciting. But I think perhaps that's maybe short-lived as it's not as relied on in that EV space. But nickel, we saw a couple of talks yesterday on nickel. Obviously, there's that demand for nickel within the cathode of an EV battery. So you've got a battery made up of an anode and a cathode. The cathode has lots of lithium, but also lots of nickel in there. And the chemistry of those batteries is changing. So currently, there's about an equal parts of nickel, manganese, and cobalt, and that's changing to 8 parts, so 8-1-1, 8 parts nickel to 1 part cobalt, 1 part manganese. And that's sort of highlighted by the grey bar on that bottom chart. You see that's increasing out towards 2030, and that's really the consumption of nickel in these EVs. So a big demand coming for nickel, and obviously that's going to impact equities too. But look, nickel's not at the same price it was in 07, 08. But there is strong corporate and M&A activity, and just on the bottom there I've highlighted some of the activity that's happening. We've obviously had Wyloo Metals and BHP sort of go head-to-head for Noront over in Canada. And then more locally we've had IGO in Western Areas, talk of mergers happening there. Western Areas is 20% of Panoramic. Black Mountain and Wyloo both have 12% of Poseidon, and obviously Wyloo and IGO owning large portions of Mincor. So what we're seeing is the larger established producers taking positions in the smaller and up-and-coming developer producers, really to position themselves well for the future and to get access to that nickel supply coming online. And then just finally, in the commodity space, lithium. Lots of talk of lithium. I don't claim to be a lithium expert at all, but we have a great team in Sydney that looks over this space. But we're seeing increased EV sales, 19% month on month in China during August, year-on-year growth in Europe. The Wodgina plant is now coming back online. And obviously there's some really exciting spot auctions that are happening. I'm not sure if people have been following that, but Pilbara Minerals has been taking sort of small parcels of product and selling them at auction. And just this week, you're getting an implied spodumene concentrate 6% price of $2,600 a tonne, which is far in excess of what we're seeing in the contract sales. So that's really exciting for that area. And then Orocobre, for example, is expecting $1,650 a tonne in its December quarter, when the current contracted prices are about $1,100 a tonne. So we're seeing real growth in the demand and the pricing for lithium at the moment. And that's obviously going to impact the equities as well. And then M&A. I'll talk about M&A quite a bit now. But we're seeing increased M&A in lithium space. That started off with Galaxy and Orocobre had a merger of equals in about April this year. That's at the bottom line there. But we've seen a number of corporate activity and transactions happening since then, predominantly in South America and Africa. And a lot of sort of Chinese groups involved, but that's really a positive sign for these groups locking in supply early on and getting involved at the company level. So that's that's something to watch in the lithium space, but also further afield, and we'll talk about that in gold as well shortly. Really struggling with this ticker. There we go. So look, despite that 10-year gold bull market that I talked about earlier on, we're really not seeing a lot of developers taking that step forward into production. We've had gold at all-time highs last year, yet there's probably 4 or 5, and I've highlighted it here, in that development space. And some of them are going to move into that producer area very soon, which is great. And a couple of in the study phase, the PFS, DFS, are going to move up into developer space. Great. But some of them are actually going backwards, unfortunately. And we recently saw that with Burke, unfortunately, where cost pressures and labour concerns are sort of causing them to sort of rethink, how do they move their project forward. So that's a little bit of concern, and I will touch on that shortly. But really, the main point here is there's not a lot of developers stepping forward into that production space. But it is promising because this is a lot of deposits, about 60 or so, ASX-listed gold deposits, ordered by grade on the x-axis and size, 1,000 ounces on the y-axis there. So it's really positive to see that there are explorers defining deposits and taking them forward, hopefully, to production. but I think they're all getting picked off along the way. So a lot of these smaller explorers aren't actually turning into developers and producers because they're getting acquired and picked up by the majors. But look, there is a correlation between exploration spend and the commodity price, or at least there used to be. So this is global exploration spend in the gold space. And then you've got the gold price overlaid on top. So in 2010, 11, 12, gold was running, lots of money was spent on exploration. That makes a lot of sense. But it sort of came out of whack last year in 2019, 2020. And I was like, well, why is that? Like, are we spending less money in exploration? But what I really think is happening is that gap is being filled by M&A. Or certainly now it's being filled, and I'll sort of touch on that now. So why I think it's M&A, so this chart shows the value of total M&A in the Australian space last year, gold space last year. And you'll see a big jump in 2021, I should say. And that sort of filled that gap. So we weren't spending as much on exploration, but we're spending those dollars on M&A. But in 2020, we didn't see that happening. And I was like, well, why is that? I suspect it's probably COVID-19. We weren't, I think the companies were probably a bit, weren't willing to commit to spending those M&A dollars, sort of wondering, well, what's going to happen in the world? And we're probably seeing the floodgates open now in 21 and that big surge in M&A activity. And I've just highlighted some of the transactions some of them are actually ongoing right now. The Apollo, sort of takeover by Gold Road or Ramelius. Let's see what happens there. That's really exciting. But just highlighting lots of M&A over organic growth. So there's inorganic growth in M&A and not that organic exploration growth we're seeing that we used to see previous years. And so why M&A? Why is this happening? So there's development risk. If you're a junior and you want to sort of take that step to be a developer and a producer, there's risk involved. There's skill shortages at the moment. So to get a team together to actually start producing is challenging. And then there's rising costs. We saw Bardock face that problem recently. And so, you'd much rather perhaps an established producer acquire your project. They've got a strong balance sheet and an established workforce. And it perhaps a little bit easier and less risk for those established producers to acquire you and move forward. So that's why I think we're seeing a bit more M&A. And obviously for those producers, it's staying relevant. You see Northern Star and Saracen had a big merger. And then, their peers and competitors are going, well, geez, we want to stay relevant here. So we sort of need to grow. And the quickest way to do that is grow inorganically. So just to finish off, I've shown this chart before and I've updated it. This is when you spend more money, you find more deposits. It's pretty straightforward, it makes sense. And I've just added in predictive discovery, PDI, made a great discovery at Bankan Creek in Guinea. And so that was drilled out and a maiden resource of 3.6 million ounces in only 17 months. So that's a absolutely fantastic effort. But really excited that we hopefully will see more expenditure in the ground and hopefully more discoveries, which is really exciting for me and what I do in my day-to-day role. So look, last slide, just to summarise a generally positive outlook in 2021 and into 22. We think that gold bull market, that 10-year gold bull market will continue, and there's a supportive macro background, I think, to underlie that. Copper, nickel, lithium. They're the three commodities we really like, and we think there's going to be some positive movements in there. And zinc, perhaps more temporary, I think. And then there's various exploration trends that we're seeing, lots of M&A, a little bit of a decline in exploration spend, but there are new discoveries being made when we see money being spent in the ground. So look, I'll leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for your attention. I'll be at the booth if anyone would like to come and have a bit of a chat. And have a great rest of the conference. Cheers.
Thank you, Paul. That was pretty good. We would have liked a bit of a pastry chef thing as well as your second backup, but that was pretty interesting. And some of those people that we talked about yesterday, those companies, Pickle Crow, were there as well, and it'll be interesting. I'm sure that the team at Corazon would have been interested to hear what you're saying about nickel as well. So that's good, matching up with the information that we're getting from the presenters as they came up to see if it's places that you would like to invest your money in. So we're not going to start with the world of mining. We are going to start in the world of health. And improving our health. So our first presenter to come up this morning is Liz Dallimore. Liz is the CEO of a company called Argenica. And as she comes up and joins us on the stage, I'm going to leave you with a sobering fact, and that is that every 19 minutes, someone here in Australia suffers from a stroke. And if we've ever had to support someone who has suffered from a stroke, or perhaps some of us here have had a minor stroke ourselves, we know that one of the things that's really important is trying to preserve our quality of life, and to do that we need to preserve our brain tissue. And there may be a solution here for both that and your investment portfolio. Would you please make a very, very welcome Liz Dallimore.
Thanks, Chrissy, for that introduction. A lot of that you've stolen my thunder, but thank you, and for setting the scene, especially after a talk on commodities, always a bit hard to follow. So thank you so much for being here today and to hear the story of Argenica Therapeutics. We are a pretty newly listed company. We listed on the ASX in June this year, and have had a pretty good start, so listing it at 20 cents and hovering around the 36 cent price at the moment, with a huge amount of value still to be had in the company. So just a standard disclaimer before I get into it. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a snapshot of the company. I'm sure a lot of you haven't heard of Argenica Therapeutics. So really what we are trying to do is develop these best-in-class novel neuroprotective therapeutics. So therapies that can protect brain cells following a stroke and other types of brain injury. And we're doing this by developing and commercialising our lead candidate, which is ARG-007. So this is a neuroprotective peptide, it's cationic, it's arginine-rich, and it comes with a huge amount of preclinical research behind it out of the Perinatal Institute and the University of Western Australia up in Perth. So we've got some fantastic data that shows the efficacy of this drug in multiple models of stroke, but also other brain injuries, including traumatic brain injury and perinatal hypoxia. So we still partner really closely with the Perinatal Institute and the University of Western Australia to continue to build that body of research and knowledge around the efficacy and the safety of ARG-007, but also looking at some other drug candidates. And we've recently announced our partnership with Linear Clinical, which is based up in Perth, and they are a clinical trial facility. So we'll work with them closely to do our phase 1 clinical trial. The company has really strong IP, so we have patents granted in the EU, Japan and China, and US national filing is in progress. And we own the IP 100%, so it has come out of UWA and into the company, and we are free of all royalties and encumbrances around that IP. So just our capital structure, we have 37 million shares on issue. A number of those shares are still in escrow from many of our seed investors and also board and management. We just announced this morning our cash balance to end of September is sitting around 5.9 mil, and that will take us all the way to the end of our phase 1 clinical trial. Market cap's hovering around 28 mil as well. So just on to the drug itself and what it does and why it's so important in a stroke model and other types of brain injury. So cell death in the brain, or it's also known as infarction, results from an inadequate blood supply to the affected area. So if we're talking about stroke and if we're talking about ischemic stroke, which makes up around 85% of all strokes, that inadequate blood supply is caused by a clot in the blood vessels in the brain. And so you get this immediate infarct, this immediate area of cell death. And then what happens as time is delayed to treatment, that cell death essentially cascades out. So you get this ripple effect of cell death happening in the brain. So whilst there's no drug that can actually stop that initial infarction or that initial area of cell death, what our drug has shown to do in preclinical animal models is to have a multiple mechanism of action that stops that cascading out of cell death. So in animal models, we've shown that we can slow that progression of cell death and preserve that still viable tissue. And that is really important in functional recovery for these patients. So we are going after the stroke market initially. That is where the majority of our preclinical data is. But we also have some fantastic preclinical data in traumatic brain injury and also perinatal hypoxia. So I'll talk about those two a bit later. So why stroke? Why are we going after this particular indication? It is one of the leading causes of death and disability worldwide. So 15 million people have a first stroke globally every year. And as Chrissy said, that equates to one person every 19 minutes in Australia having a stroke. Only about 10% of those will make a full recovery. The majority of people that suffer a stroke have long-term disability, lasting brain damage, and of those 15 million people, around 5 million people will die because of the delay to get to treatment. So we know that time is brain. So for every minute delayed in receiving treatment, 1.9 million brain cells will die. And that just expands out. So for every hour stroke treatment is delayed, your brain ages 3.6 years. And there is currently no universal drug on the market that has the ability to protect brain cells following stroke. So we hope to address this market with ARG-007. So for those of you that aren't familiar with, I guess, what sort of the current treatment plan is for someone that's suffered a stroke, when you have a stroke, the ambulance arrives and there's very little that paramedics can actually do to triage that patient. They'll determine the severity of the stroke, doing what's known as a RACE score. But the aim is really to get that patient to hospital as soon as possible, diagnose a stroke and get them into treatment. It's so critical to diagnose a stroke because there's two main types of stroke. So ischemic stroke, which is caused by clot, and then there's a hemorrhagic stroke, which is caused by bleed on the brain. So for an ischemic stroke, the treatment is really to remove that clot. So you can do that either by administering a drug, which dissolves the clot, or by mechanical thrombectomy, actually surgically removing the clot. But if you give that clot-busting drug to someone that's had a hemorrhagic stroke, it'll exacerbate the bleeding of that stroke patient and can result in death. So it's really, really critical that that patient gets to a stroke care unit and actually gets diagnosed the type of stroke. So in all that delay in that treatment, you're getting those rapidly increasing levels of neuronal cell death, which is proportional to the functional outcome of those patients. So what we want to do with ARG-007 is have it administered by paramedics in the field to stroke patients so that we can start protecting brain cells shortly after someone has suffered a stroke. This buys them time, essentially, to get to hospital and receive the treatment that they need. So we're reducing that total amount of cell death, preserving still viable brain tissue, allowing that patient to have a better functional recovery. So the real benefits of ARG-007 is that it's simple. It's a simple IV injection. So it's a one-off injection infused in the patient over 10 minutes. We know from all our extensive animal studies that it does reduce brain injury and neuronal cell death. It fits very easily into the current stroke treatment plan, so it can be administered by paramedics, emergency physicians. And it will extend that time window, buying these patients more time to get to hospital and to get the treatment they need. So if you think about patients coming regionally, having to get Royal Flying Doctors, coming into either Charlie's or Fiona Stanley, they need that time, they need to preserve those brain tissue. And ultimately, it will improve the lives and lower costs to the healthcare system. So we've got really encouraging results to date for ARG-007. So as I said, extensive amounts over a decade of preclinical work undertaken at the Perinatal Institute. We have shown that we get a 67% reduction in brain tissue death following a stroke, and we see that protection lasting up to 28 days post-stroke as well. We also know that our drug does not exacerbate bleeding in a hemorrhagic stroke patient, so we can administer it in the field by paramedics. It will not impact hemorrhagic stroke patients. And we've also seen no adverse effects in animal studies of our drug. And one of the critical things is that we know that our drug, when it's co-administered with the clot-dissolving drug, is not degraded. It remains stable and continues to provide neuroprotection. So patients can still receive the clot-busting drug through their treatment plan. So just some of our near-term catalysts and milestones that we're looking to hit sort of towards the end of this calendar year and into next calendar year. So it's all really gearing up for our phase 1 clinical trial. So for those of you that don't sort of understand the clinical development pathway, the phase 1 clinical trial is looking at the safety of our drug and the tolerability of our drug in healthy volunteers. So it won't be in stroke patients, it will be in healthy people. So in order to do that, there's a number of studies that we have to do to get there. So we have to look at the pharmacokinetics of the drug. So how is it being absorbed, distributed, metabolised and excreted in the body? What's actually happening to that drug in the body? We also need to look at the safety and the toxicity of the drug as well before we can move it into humans. So we've initiated those 2 types of studies. We've also initiated the work with Linear to set up for our phase 1 clinical trial, and we hope to start our phase 1 clinical trial towards the end of Q1 next calendar year. So this is our proposed trial design. So I will caveat that this is still subject to ethics approval, but we will have 32 healthy patients in the phase 1. We'll split them into 4 cohorts, with each cohort receiving a different dose of the drug. So we'll start the first cohort, which will have 8 participants receiving the lowest dose of our drug. These cohorts will be done sequentially. So we'll bring the first 8 volunteers in, 2 will receive a placebo and 6 will receive ARG-007. We'll make sure in that lowest dose that there's no adverse reactions and then move on to the next dose. So volunteers come in, they spend 48 hours in Linear. We monitor them, we take bloods, we assess vital signs, those sorts of things. Take further data at day 3 and at day 8. So we will have preliminary data coming through as we progress throughout our phase 1 trial, which we will put out to the market. Thanks. So really the primary objectives of the phase 1 is to understand how ARG-007 affects the body, what's it actually doing to the body through those PK assessments. Make sure that it's safe when it's administered through the IV injection, and then determine what that ideal safe dose is across those 4 cohorts, and obviously ensuring that there's no adverse reactions in any of those volunteers. So once we complete our phase 1, we'll be progressing to our phase 2. So this is where we do it in patients that have suffered a stroke. We'll likely do that in the emergency department, and that will be in collaboration with stroke care units across Australia. So in Perth, you have a stroke care unit at Charlie's and at Fiona Stanley, so we'll bring them on board, and then other stroke care units across Australia. But what is great about doing a phase 1 and looking at the safety of your drug is that you can accelerate the progression of that drug in other indications. So as I mentioned before, we'll look at perinatal hypoxia, which is essentially a reduction in oxygenation or blood flow in infants. So it usually happens immediately prior to, during or post-labour, and it is one of the leading causes of infant mortality and disability worldwide. We'll also progress our traumatic brain injury as well as concussion, so looking at mild TBI resulting from sporting injuries and the like. And then we'll look at surgically induced stroke as well. So this is where someone going in for, say, cardiac surgery or aneurysm repair, it's quite common for people to suffer a stroke in those types of surgeries. And I will move on quickly. So we are fortunate to be governed by a fantastic board with so Jeff Pocock, who's here, our chairman, Liddy and Terry, extensive experience in capital markets, as well as an amazing clinical team. So our clinical advisory committee, chaired by David Blacker, there's extensive amount of experience across these gentlemen in running stroke trials. David runs the stroke unit up at Charlie's, so very fortunate. And just some investment highlights. Sorry, you're going to give me a hug?
Do not be sorry. It's a brilliant presentation. Thank you so much for that.
No problem. So just really clear pathway to trials. We are addressing a massive unmet clinical need. We have extensive preclinical data to back up accelerating our drug into the clinic, an exceptional team, and some really fantastic near-term catalysts which is going to drive value in the company. So thank you very much.
Well done. Thanks so much, Liz. We've had some interesting products, haven't we? I've heard some of the new Hero Boys were in up the back of the room a little while ago too. I reckon we sold a number of those products yesterday, and a number of you have invested in that one. We've got another medical team coming in a bit later on today. They're looking at returning the use of muscles to people who are paraplegic and quadriplegic as well. So as we said, really interesting topics, but also they could be great for your bottom line for investing. All right, who knows in this room where the biggest iron ore deposit is in the Atlantic? Do you know where that is? Any idea? He's in Brazil. He's in Brazil, and our next presenter knows that one only too well. Would you like to come up and join us? So joining me on stage at the moment, we have got Abby Macnish Niven. Abby is the company secretary. She's also the CFO for Tombador Iron Ltd. Now, they actually, I think you went into your capital raise, didn't you? And within 9 months of doing that capital raise, you were, boom, straight into production. So it's an amazing story. You've moved very, very quickly. So we're interested to see if you can move quickly on our investment portfolios as well. Would you please make a very welcome to discuss Tombador with us today?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us here, and thank you to Vertical Events and Canaccord for allowing us to present today. I'm pleased to represent the board of Tombador to present the project to you for our high quality iron ore production. So I just flick through the standard disclaimer that we will have to put up there. If we look at the Tombador project, this is some of Brazil's highest quality iron ore lump available on the market at the moment. We are 100% owners of the project, so Tombador Iron Ltd owns this project outright. It is in the Bahia state of Brazil, and Brazil is known as a very mining-friendly jurisdiction, which does aid very quick progress to production. The product is very, very high-grade hematite. It's around 67%, which is some of the highest you can see on the market, and the average grade of product that we've sold to date is just over 65% iron. So we do demand a price premium for that, and we are a dividend-focused company as a result of that. Our product, we've been ramping up our production of our product since we achieved all of our licences on the 21st of May in 2021 and received our operating licence from the government. And so far we have been producing sales over the last 4 months, and we currently have 149, so just under 150,000 wet metric tonnes of ore on stockpile at the mine site, as well as some at port, and we have made around 180,000 wet metric tonnes of sale of high-grade ore as at today. And we've received in the September quarter around 6.6 million Aussie for those sales. That was released in our quarterly report this morning. It took us 8 months from listing to be able to achieve our operating licence, and we immediately went into sales and production at that time. And we've currently sold to both the domestic and external markets in Brazil. In terms of the project achievements, as I mentioned, it was a fast 12 months. So we were listed at the start of October last year, so just over 12 months ago. We moved from construction to operations quite quickly. We fast-tracked our production startup, and we constructed the mine site and the project ahead of time and under budget. We also executed some key contracts, including our offtake agreement with Trafigura for our external sales. We completed the mine in February of 2021, and at that stage we were testing the site until we received our mining concession, which we received our mining concession in April and then our operating licence in May of 2021. In the meantime, we also executed some key contracts for our trucking and port operations. Once we achieved all of those operating licences, we have moved quickly into sales, having already had the offtake agreement in place. So far we have sold 180,000 tonnes and loaded 4 shipments to date. And I'd highlight that all of this was achieved in the middle of the pandemic. So obviously Brazil was a very hard hit country in terms of the pandemic, and our team has managed to produce these exceptional results and ramp up on the ground at that time. This shows our 4 ships at port getting loaded, so an average of around 38,000 wet metric tonnes on each of those ships with very low moisture content, around 1% average across those 4 shipments. So those 4 ships have left since July, so about 1 every month. Looking at our role in the community, we've also taken our social responsibility very seriously in Brazil, with ongoing community development programs in place, as well as the sustainability of the site that we're mining at. One thing we're working very closely with the local government on is the quality of the roads, because we obviously have a trucking operation to port. So we've run several road safety campaigns, and we have executed road maintenance and repair where required. We've also, you can see from the photos on the screen, we have a nursery, which is our rehabilitation for vegetation in the area, so that we can appropriately rehabilitate that area of the ground once we've finished mining. We've had the host community visiting the site as well and having meetings, as you can see on the top right there. And we have also continued to monitor the quality of water, air and noise levels on site since production commenced. We have also worked very closely with the town nearby, Centro Sei, so a lot of our workforce comes from that local township, so we've developed close relationships with the local government there as well. In terms of the mining operation itself, you can see the flow here. It is a very simple mining operation that we have in Brazil. It is a simple drill and blast operation at the mine face, and then it is a downhill haul, and it's a short distance to the processing area, which you can see in the crush and screen flowchart. From there, it's a simple crushing and screening plant. There's no tailings required, no wet dam, etc. It's a dry operation. We then truck haul the product to port for our external sales, or alternatively, if we're selling to the Brazilian internal steel mills, they pick up at the mine gate. We work with a reputable contractor on site, and they provide all of our mining operation work, our crushing and screening operations, and the truck haul at site, and they are supervised by our dedicated team on site as well. And then in terms of the handling to the port, we have 2 contracts in place, one for our trucking and one for our port handling operations by 2 very seasoned operators in Brazil. And then shipping to customers is handled by our Trafigura contract, so we work closely with the Trafigura to lock in customers in Europe for our product. In terms of marketing, as I mentioned, we have the offtake agreement with Trafigura. That is for purchase of 100% of ore that we choose to sell into the export market. This pricing in the contract is linked to the 65% iron index because our product is a very high grade, so it's linked to that higher pricing. We also have the right within this contract to sell to Trafigura, or alternatively, the company can sell directly to local customers for domestic sales as well. So it provides us the flexibility to sell directly internally into the Brazil market. Importantly, the Trafigura agreement also provides certainty for sales externally or international market, but provides crucial working capital support. So this allowed us to be cash flow positive from our first shipment, as they do provide working capital support as we move the product to the port. Since the 1st of July, the 4 shipments that I showed earlier have sailed to date, and that's resulted in 151,000 wet metric tonnes of products sold to the European market, and an average grade of higher than 65% iron. This quality lump is amongst the highest in the world, and it's very, very rare to have this high quality lump in the market, particularly at the Atlantic Basin. So several of the Brazilian steel mills that have tested our product have described the product as corrective material, which means that they can blend it a higher quality products such as ours with lower quality in order to create a higher overall quality of product at the Brazilian steel mills. So they're looking at using it for that purpose. The premium that we receive for this high quality iron ore is also assisted with offsetting the recent highly elevated ocean freight prices that we've seen due to the pandemic, which has been a positive for the company and the working capital as well. In terms of the internal market, we've been working to develop our relationships with several Brazilian steel mills, and we have had repeat orders during the September quarter from several of those, resulting in 24,000 wet metric tonnes being sold internally since the 1st of July. The benefit of the selling into the internal market is they pick it up at the mine gate, so we're then not exposed to the freight costs that are currently much, much higher than they have been historically. If we look at our current mineral resource, this is our JORC resource that shows what we went to market with when we listed in October 2020. At the moment, we are working to update this resource with resource experts on the ground and convert this into a reserve. The company anticipates that this work will be completed in the first calendar quarter of 2022, which will be released to market at that time. So you can just see there a full photo of the crushing and screening plant and the stockpiles behind. You can see that the environment that we are working in Brazil it's actually in some ways quite similar to Western Australia and the Pilbara region. It's quite a dry area of Brazil. It's not a heavily dense rainforest, and it doesn't get a huge amount of rainfall either. So it's a part of Brazil that's quite amenable to this type of open pit mining operation. For capital structure, we listed in October 2020, raising $15 million on market. At that time, we listed at 2.5 cents, and we had a market cap of around just above $45 million. Since then, we have done a subsequent capital raise in March 2021 with Canaccord as the lead broker there. We did this in an amenable environment in the market. The reason we raised that $20 million was to bring forward our production, so it allowed us to ramp up production very quickly with working capital support. And we've also allocated some of those funds to bring forward our beneficiation studies. So that is looking at, I guess, the waste or lower grade product and being able to set up a separate project to beneficiate that ore in order to convert that into saleable ore as well. So that project is underway now that we've been funded for that in the March raise. Since then, our current share price is around 4.2 cents and we are around 90 million market cap. Colony Singapore continues to be a significant shareholder. That was the original owner of the tenement, and this tenement was carved off into its own separate entity for listing. They have maintained their holding throughout this period at around 46%. And as released this morning in our quarterly activities report, we're sitting on just under $30 million Aussie equivalent across the countries that we operate in, which is crucial for us to continue being able to run at this ramped up production and also bring forward those beneficiation studies. We have ample working capital available to us. In terms of the company and our experience, we have proven expertise on the board in Brazil mining operations, logistics, marketing and finance. We have Anna Newling as our non-executive independent chair, who's worked in the industry for many years. Keith Liddelow is an experienced metallurgical engineer, and he has been the founder and chair of several unlisted and listed companies in the past. Stephen Quantrill is our executive director, who manages many of the operations with the Brazil team day to day, very experienced engineer. And we have David Chapman as a non-executive director, who is a very experienced resource geologist who works very closely with our geoscience team. In country, we have Brazil Oliver as a CEO. We have a very, very strong senior management team in Brazil, many of whom have worked on this broader project for over 10 years. Gabriel himself has been with the business, the larger project, for around 13 years. So despite not being able to travel during COVID, while we've been ramping up and being able to sit down with our team face to face, we have the utmost trust and loyalty with our team, and they have managed to do an incredible job in the last 12 months to get us to listing and production in that short time period. I'd like to thank our shareholders for their support for the last year and their hopeful continued support going forward. We have so much excitement in the team as we continue to ramp up to full production into 2022 for this project. If you have any questions at all about the project, myself and Jeffrey Goodwin from our company will be at the booth if you'd like to have a chat with us further about the company, and thank you very much for having us today.
Thanks, Abby. Spot on timing too. Congratulations. Great start to the morning. Now, in his presentation this morning, Paul Howard highlighted the huge trajectory you would have seen for lithium on that slide. WA's Global Lithium is an emerging lithium exploration company, and they are aiming to ride this little trajectory, aren't you? So their focus is on their 100% Marble Bar Lithium project, which is up in the Pilbara, and this gentleman in front of me today, or you, excuse me, is MD James Wright. Would you please make James very welcome, everyone?
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me on the microphone? We've just put this on rather than stand behind the lectern. Perfect. My name is Jamie. I'm here today to talk about Global Lithium. We're an ASX-listed exploration company, and we have the exciting Marble Bar Lithium project. Before I get started though, just a couple of housekeeping matters. I'd like to advise everyone that we are in a trading halt this morning while we undertake a capital raising. It doesn't prohibit me from giving this presentation today. I'd also like to extend a warm thank you to the people who've put this conference together. It's a wonderful venue. Busselton is a beautiful place. It's a beautiful part of the world. Very grateful to be here today. And I'd like to extend thank you to our loyal shareholders who have made the effort to come down and spend time with us and be part of the conference and our journey. Now, before I get into the presentation direct, I'd like to say that I'd like to start with a photo, and this photo is of our drill rig up in Marble Bar drilling lithium targets right now. We have a program underway. We are a busy company, and we are busy exploring by investing in drilling and other activities around the site. And for me, I like to go and I like to watch the first hole we put into the ground because it's important to me to get the program off on a good start. Our primary focus is our Marble Bar Lithium project, which is a hard rock spodumene project located in one of the most infrastructure-rich mining jurisdictions on the planet, the Pilbara. More than that, it's a Tier 1 lithium province. There are 2 world-class lithium deposits around 100 kilometres from us, which is a stone's throw in the Pilbara. And what's important about those 2 deposits is that our project shares a lot of geological similarity with those 2 projects, being Pilgangoora, which is owned by Pilbara Minerals, and they've had a very busy week in terms of announcing some joint ventures, but also the results of some recent auction pricing, which I'll talk about in a little while, and Wodgina, which is owned in joint venture between Albemarle, one of the world's largest lithium companies, and Mineral Resources. And now Mineral Resources announced this week that they're looking to restart Wodgina. So we're seeing around us in the Pilbara quite a lot of activity in the lithium space. And for us, it's a really exciting time because we're at the forefront of growth for our project. We've got an incredibly large project area, we've got a lithium resource already, and we are investing time and energy into growing that resource. We think it's a beautiful time to be in the lithium market. We are going through a consumer-driven structural shift in the way the world deals with energy, and lithium is a key raw material to be part of that transition. And that's why we do what we do. In our project area, we have already discovered the Archer lithium deposit. It's a 10.5 million tonne resource at 1% lithium oxide. It's a really good start. It's a new discovery. It's not a rehashed project that's been around. We found it and we're drilling it. Outside of Archer though, we have a very large project area, and we've already established lithium mineralisation across more than 6 kilometres of strike, and we have lithium in drill holes that are more than 15 kilometres apart. It's a very large system. And to tackle that, we've got RC programs underway right now that are chasing up targets to see if we can grow our project size and then come back later next year with broader programs to really start to understand what we've got. In parallel with our exploration, we're doing work, preliminary metallurgical test work already, even though we're still very early in our life cycle, because we're seeking to understand our deposit as early and as quickly as we can. The market for lithium is exploding, and lithium prices around the world are increasing and increasing quickly. When we started our IPO journey earlier this year, lithium spodumene prices, which are the prices most relevant for us, were sitting at around $400 a tonne. And you can see on the slide behind me that those prices are already up around $2,500 a tonne this calendar year. That's a 500% increase in price in a very short space of time. And every commentator that we look at is forecasting that there's a really good chance that this market will continue and continue for some years to come as the world transitions towards electric vehicles. And we're well funded. We've got $7 million in cash at the moment, and that puts us in a really good spot to carry forward our plans into next year. A little bit of history about us. We were founded by Dr. Tianmin Chen back about 3 years ago, so we've got a good operating history. We've been around for a while now, but we only listed on the ASX about 6 months ago because we felt that now was the right time to bring our company to market, and we felt that now was the right time for investors to have the opportunity to participate in our story. We're trading at around 40 to 45 cents at the moment on a 20-cent IPO, so we've had a good return for our shareholders. We think there's more to come, and our market cap is around 55 million right now. We've got a strong, supportive shareholder base, which has put us in well stead to carry forward into the next 12 months. I like to talk about people before we get too far into technicals, because to me, people are the platform for any business. So Dr. Chen on our board is a founder of the company and a very well-regarded member of the mining community in Western Australia. We have Warwick Hazeldine as our chair, and Warwick brings a deep set of experience and skills, not just in PR, but also in critical lithium transactions that have happened here in this state in the last 5 years. My background is mining engineering, geology, and finance. I've got a few degrees, but most of my career has been spent helping companies in the bulk commodity space, like lithium, carry their project from inception through to development or value crystallisation. But the most important person that I see in our business at the moment is Brian Burke. Brian is our exploration manager who has been tasked with growing our project, and Brian's expertise comes from his previous experience with Altura Mining, where he led that project from greenfields to 40 million tonnes. And the reason I raise that is Altura, their Pilgangoora pegmatite project, very, very similar geologically speaking to what we've got, and it's really encouraging for us to attract someone with Brian's expertise. But if people are a platform for a business, then ESG and sustainability are our pillars, and we've kept that really simple. ESG, environmental, social and governance. It is at the forefront of the board's mind in every decision that we make. We want to do the right thing by not just our stakeholders, not just our employees and staff, but by the society in which we operate and the community where we're active. So we spend a lot of time engaging with local town, traditional owners, suppliers, contractors, etc. Jumping into the technicals a little bit now, and please forgive me if I get too far into it, I'm a geologist. We have an emerging hard rock lithium discovery. And I think what the key concept on this slide that I'd like to draw your attention to is this scale bar. This is a 5-kilometre scale bar. Now that's important because when we look at our map here, our project site has what we call the Goldilocks zone, which is where lithium is predicted to fall out in the geological model. Now not only is it predicted to fall out, but we're seeing it in drilling, we're seeing it in practice, so we're proving the model. And we can see we've got our Archer project here at 10.5 million tonnes, which is our start, but then we've got lithium in drilling 15 kilometres away, which we believe is part of the same system. And so what we're doing as a company is really trying to understand and explore to see what happens in between those 2 points, and is there something else there that we can discover to grow our resource base. Zooming in a little bit on Archer itself. Archer comprises multiple pegmatites that express its surface, which means they outcrop. You can walk over the top of them, you can kick the spodumene on the surface. We're already getting intercepts like 16 metres at 1.4% lithium oxide, which is actually a really encouraging starting intercept, and it's part of our resource base. But what's exciting about that is it's only 37 metres below the surface. And that pegmatite outcrops. I've walked across the top of that pegmatite. And it's within 100 metres of a sealed road. And that sealed road goes all the way through to Port Hedland, which already exports spodumene concentrate. But for us, since we've listed, we've already done a couple of programs. We're into our third drilling program in 4 months. We're active. And we are seeing results outside of our mineral resource, which give us a lot of encouragement that in time we've got a good opportunity to grow that resource. And we're seeing results like 28 metres at 1.51%. That's not true width, but it's actually really exciting for us to return those sort of results so early in our listed life. If we zoom out to a little bit of a plan view of Archer at the moment, what we can see here is we have the sealed road that comes up through around the side of our project area, and this red is bringing the resource through to the surface. And you can see that we've got large gaps in our resource that give us a lot of opportunity to explore, see if we can grow it. Not just beneath the road reserve, and roads always have a habit of following geological contacts, but also outside the road once we get more established on the site. The dotted outline there is the plan view that we were just looking at, and the reason I wanted to show that as a dotted outline is you can see the size of the project area that we're working in. When we listed, we took a bit of a risk and we stepped out and we decided to do some drilling 6 kilometres away from Archer, and it came back highly positive, highly exciting. And so the reason we have a drill rig on site right now is to follow up on all those interesting hits that we're seeing. But not only that, when we've got something that's 6 kilometres long and 3 kilometres wide, there's something like 18 million square metres. We're trying to find targets that are as wide as this podium here. So it's actually quite challenging, but it's also quite exciting. And what we've done in the last little while is invest in targeting so that as we come back into this program and future programs, we're doing as much work as we can to expedite the discovery and growth for our project. We've invested in innovative use of drone technology. So we have had a drone fly our project area and take photographs down to 4 centimetre resolution across that whole project area, which means that we can have our geologists working from Perth so that they don't have to work in the heat or on site or remotely, and we never lose the IP. And we've used that in combination with a bunch of other geological techniques which have helped us plan and start to execute our latest program. And this targeting exercise has already identified more than 100 pegmatite targets. Now, not all of those will have spodumene, but the fact is that we're seeing that the program is working, we're seeing the targeting working, and it's giving us every opportunity to follow up and seek to grow. We've also bought the tenements to the south. Now, they're not as advanced as the area that I'm showing on the slide here, but what we can see, as we move away from Archer towards the south and into that zone where we've seen lithium in drilling 15 kilometres away, we've now started greenfields exploration work on those tenements. And that gives us another exciting phase of news flow over the next little while. Outside of lithium, we've got a gold project that we're working up called Twin Veins. And I need to mention that because while our focus is lithium, we're seeing some really exciting results come out of that project. And in time, we think it could develop into a second story. One area I'd like to focus on though is location, location, location. Outside of the project itself, our location near Marble Bar is very, very enviable. We are not a remote site. The town of Marble Bar is 15 minutes drive from our project site. When we travel there, we stay in a hotel. There's a pub in Marble Bar. There's an airstrip that's actually on our tenements. There's 4 types of accommodation. There's a service station. There's a general store. We have access to people and services. And that sealed road that you can see on the slide there goes all the way through to Port Hedland, and that road carries quad road trains already, and Port Hedland already exports spodumene concentrate. So in the event that we find economic mineralisation and get to that point of development, we're actually going to be really well placed to take it forward. Our programs are underway into a resource update next year. And I'm going to wrap this up quickly now because I'm getting the wind up. And EVs are part of the global megatrend, which is why we do what we do. And having uncommitted spodumene supply in the Pilbara is a really strategic place to be. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jamie. I think you did bloody well as a geologist just then. And my girlfriend just bought the pub and the service station up there, Ever Bustle. So you'll see her a bit around. It's good. She loves it. Great place to live, she says. Right, I mentioned that I went for a run this morning. It was really a bit more of a shuffle. I've got a couple of soft tissue issues, some knee joint issues, bits and pieces. And I think when Greg said yesterday that health and wellness was at number 3 of that mega trends, he was spot on. I don't know about you guys, but I'm willing to pay just about anything to try and restore some mobility, or at least try and retain the sort of the equality of the mobility. So this guy here that's coming up to speak to us is in charge of a little old company from here in WA called Orthocell, which is known all around the world for its ability to restore mobility, to regenerate cells. And I'm really interested in their latest project. And look, I'm not going to say anything more about it. I'm very excited. I want him to take the whole 15 minutes. Would you put your hands together, please, for Orthocell, everyone? And the wonderful Paul Anderson.
Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks very much for the kind introduction. Thanks to Vertical and to Canaccord for the sponsorship of the meeting. Delight to be here. It's a delight as a healthcare company to be amongst the miners, and hopefully you enjoy our story today. Just the disclaimer as we have. Just some investment highlights about our company. Very important to note that we, our products are de-risked, they're in clinic, and we have also had our first products approved by the FDA. So we know that these are products that work. We own our manufacturing. We haven't outsourced that, and it's really important in this space to own that manufacturing. We've got over 100 patents delivered internationally, so we've got a tremendous 5-family patent scenario, and we've got an executive team that's executed in this space before with multiple near-term and mid-term milestones on the horizon. So what is it that we've developed? We've developed regenerative medicine approaches to restore mobility in adults. That manifests itself in 2 separate products, 2 separate portfolios. The first is a product called CellGrow, or a platform called CellGrow. It's a collagen medical device. It's a biological sheet of paper, if you like, a sheet of collagen that enhances tissue growth, and I'll talk about that as we go through the presentation. It has multiple applications, and really in our clinical trials has demonstrated some outstanding results, which I'm going to talk to you about later in the presentation. The second of our product portfolio is what's called a cellular therapy. It's using cells from within the body, often called stem cells. These are a mature type of stem cell, and they're designed to treat damaged chronic tendons. These tendons really don't have a great clinical pathway and are difficult problems to solve. And we're going to be announcing later on in this year, in Q4, our randomised data, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the journey that we're on our way to the US and the FDA. Needless to say, these are large markets, and I'm sure every one of you in the room today has either a tendon issue or has had some soft tissue injuries to their body. So these are large markets, both for our CellGrow product portfolio and platform, and also for our Ortho-ATI, our cellular therapy. And we know that the demand for these products are really rising. And I think it's important to note here that our focus, whilst we have products approved in Europe and Australia, our focus really is on the largest healthcare market in the world, and that is in the US. And our first product to the market has been approved by the FDA, and we are now marching through a market entry strategy. Our second product for nerve repair, which Chrissy alluded to, and I'm going to talk to in more detail, is now moving forward in the design trial stage. And really what I want you to think about here is, with ATI, is that we're now driving that into the FDA and into the US market, and again, results due at the end of this year, which is really going to push that product in there. And from a mining perspective, I really want you to think that these are tenements that have been drilled. We're converting these resources into reserves, and we're really now in the production phase and planning and commencement. And in combination with that, we're also engaging with offtake scenarios in the US for our lead product, just to put it into a mining parlance for you. What's our comparables? 2 companies on the right there, Avita and PolyNovo, work in similar spaces. They're not competitors to us. But if you look at the development of those companies, they were exactly where we're at today, with a similar stage of development. So we see a tremendous amount of upside in this company, both in the short term, mid-term and long term. So what's a cellular therapy and how does it work? We know that patients and people suffer from these tendon injuries. They're difficult to treat. There's really very little out there for these tendon injuries except for surgery, and often surgery fails. And in the rotator cuff in the shoulder, up to 40% of those surgeries can fail. So we know there's a real need for a non-surgical approach. We take a small, tiny biopsy from your body of healthy tendon, we cultivate those cells, and then we re-inject them back into the damaged area where your cells have effectively died. A bit like what Liz was talking about stroke, where you get this cellular death. Exactly the same thing happens in tendon. And so these cells, when injected, enable the patients to improve their function and reduction in pain. And we've spent some time here in Australia validating this technology with over 700 patients treated. We know who these patients are and we know how to treat them. From a clinical results perspective, we've been able to reduce their pain, and we've been able to reduce their pain for a long time. 4.5 years is the longest that we've followed up with these patients. So this is a durable, disruptive technology that not only reduces your pain, but increases your function, and importantly, function out to 4.5 years in clinical studies. You may know this bloke on the right, a legend of the West Coast Eagles. We treated him with ATI when he was at the peak of his career. He couldn't run and he couldn't jump. His career was over and he was facing the prospect of early retirement at the age of 24. We injected him with his own tendon stem cells and he was able to come back and be a premiership player and to be a legend of the game, both for the West Coast and for the AFL. So we know that the next steps for this technology is into the US. We know that it works. We know that it's a pathway that we can manage, and we know that there's massive markets for this technology. And so we're really excited about the results that we're announcing in Q4 this year. This is a very high-level study, a randomised study, one of the highest level studies that you can do, and this is really contributing to our pathway into the US. I want to segue now into our collagen medical device, and strategically we chose to move into the dental membrane market. And this is a market which I'm sure you're all aware, and I know that there's people in the audience today, not only that have tendon injuries, that have also had implants into their teeth, and I'm one of them. 40% of those implants that go into your teeth to replace a tooth requires a bone graft, and every single one of those bone grafts requires a collagen biological membrane like ourselves. And so these are big markets. And what we've been able to do in our clinical studies and our validation is to show that we're almost halving the length of treatment. We are providing a more predictable, hello, answer that please, a more predictable and higher quality bone restoration when using our product. And as a result of that, we've been able to assemble a stellar group across 3 continents who have all validated that this technology and this product is a valuable one. And these are the people who are the key for our offtake agreements. These are the people who are key liaisons between ourselves and the partners that we're looking to distribute these products internationally. And that's exactly what we're doing. Clinical advocacy programs, build awareness, and grow our brand within the market, and we're currently in discussions with 2 partners to distribute and promote the product within the US. Remplier, the third of our products, and for nerve regeneration. This fellow that you can see in the middle there is Adrian. He's one of our patients, and I'll talk to him a little bit very shortly. But how do you fix these nerves? These are about crushed nerves. This is about cut nerves, and this is about quadriplegic patients who have lost the function of their limbs. And effectively, the techniques that are used today to try and repair these nerves is we're joining them back together with a needle and thread. So you're actually plunging a needle back into the nerve to try and heal it. It's counterintuitive, it's a little bit primitive, and there is a better way to do it. And just a word of warning, I will be showing some clinical pictures of some surgery right now. And so what happens is that where these nerves, what you can see the arrow is pointing to, that's a nerve which is coming in. This is a real nerve that works. This is a nerve that's damaged. This patient can't use his hand, can't use his arm. And so we're basically having an avatar moment here where we're reconnecting these nerves back together and enabling these muscles to move again and giving these patients mobility. And so this little piece of collagen biological device, for the first time, enables us to join these nerves back together without the use of these sutures. And what happens from the clinical results is that we're seeing predictability of outcome. We're seeing increase in the pace of these outcomes. And what the grey there on the left represents is no movement in your arms, paralysed. What it represents at month 12 on the right-hand side in green is grade 3 or grade 4 function. You and I have grade 5 function, grade 3 and 4 function in these quadriplegic patients. And so these are outstanding results that are really exciting the clinical community. And I just want to play for you a little video to have a taste of what it is that we're doing.
Go riding every weekend. We used to ride every Wednesday night. Besides us making noise, trudging through the bush, it was just quite peaceful and serene. 2 minutes later, on the ground, after hitting a tree with my head, blacking in and out, knowing something wasn't quite right, couldn't feel my legs. All hell broke loose. Pretty much from the start, you know, just lying in a bed, couldn't move. We were staring at the roof. All I kept on thinking was about me and the kids.
Adrian unfortunately had a cervical spine injury. He's a level C6 quadriplegic. He did not have any elbow extension. Left hand was functioning a bit better than his right hand. He was still dependent upon others.
Being a quad, if you got used to your arms, you'd love use of your hands. Just make life that much easier.
Nerves can regenerate. The actual nerve cell resides in the spinal cord, and if we provide the right environment, the body will be able to heal that nerve, like a lizard growing a new tail.
The product that we've developed has enabled us for the very first time to heal severed nerves or crushed nerves without plunging a needle into that nerve to pull it back together again. And so we've been able to use a tensionless and almost sutureless method to pull these nerves together.
Using something like CellGrow, we can put just 1 or 2 sutures to align the nerves, and then we can build contact using CellGrow, which comes in a thin sheath. It has a rough surface which bonds the outside layer of the nerve, and a smooth surface which prevents it from bonding to surrounding structures. For Adrian, we wanted to give him elbow extension so he could transfer and utilise a wheelchair. So we spliced some of the healthy nerves that are working his shoulder muscles to the elbow extensors, the triceps.
One from my deltoid, because obviously you've got a few nerves in there, and plug it into my triceps, into 2 muscles in there to make that work. Supinator, which turns your hand, extends your fingers, so it extends them out, and then your brachioradialis pulls your fingers in.
Adrian's done particularly well. For a doctor, that's the best reward, seeing that people recover.
If you don't give it a go, you won't know if you're going to see improvements or not. You've got nothing to lose. Doing wheelchair rugby, so I'd like to try and progress a bit more at that. So neurosurgery on my triceps definitely helped with that quite a lot. The kids are the #1 priority, really. My daughter Piper still hopes that I'll walk again. I love them very much. This surgery has definitely made a bit of an impact on me.
To see those patients now, and to have us view them, to be able to use their wheelchair, to be able to hug their wife, to be able to hug their children is a deeply satisfying thing for our company to have achieved.
Yeah, so that's Adrian's story. I've seen that 100 times and it still moves me. When we first met Adrian, he was wheeled into the doctor's rooms by his wife. And now you see him in the wheelchair playing rugby, and he visited us in his car 2 weeks ago. And he told us he was going to do a burnout on the exit from there. He was pleased as punch. And so not only was he improved physically, but he was improved mentally. And so an outstanding response here. And we know that these are very large markets. We know that we have a tremendously impactful product that is going to be driven into the US FDA. and also please look out for registration of that product in the Australian marketplace. We've got a lot of upcoming catalysts. We've moved this share price from 35 cents up to around 55 today. As you can see, our market cap is around 100 mil, and our comparables are in the 500 mil to $1 billion mark. So we're really excited about where we're heading. Please look out for our randomised clinical control results that'll be out before the end of this year, and also for our approval in Australia of our nerve product. It's been a pleasure to be here today. Thank you very much for listening to me, and happy to take some questions out in the foyer if there is any. Thank you.
Good on you, Paul. Thank you. We don't have enough time now for questions, but I know they'll be lining up at the booth afterwards. My little funny tendon and I will be lining up at the booth afterwards. And imagine if that had been around 20 years ago when I smacked my finger. All power to you. I hope it does get approved. Right, we're going back to mining now, aren't we? All right, better make it interesting. Not a lot of pressure on you, sir. How are you feeling about this presentation?
Oh, I'm a bit emotional right now, thanks.
Good, okay. That's not, okay.
Thanks, Orthocell.
Not bad. Mr. Brendan Bradley. Okay, so Brendan, what's your background? What are you originally?
I'm a geologist by trade, Chrissy.
Are you a geo?
Yeah, so lots of rocks to talk about today.
All right, lots of rocks. So we're in a little bit of a lively presentation here, sir. Some of you have lifted the bar today. Let's go to your company, DevEx Resources. So DevEx Resources holds a diversified portfolio. They've got projects which are in Dallimore Complex here in WA, the Lachlan Ford Belt over in New South Wales, and also up in the Northern Territory, the Alligator Rivers Uranium Project. So to fill us in on all of those in 15 minutes or less and convince you to be part of their journey, would you please welcome Mr. Brendan Bradley.
Yeah, thank you, Chrissy, and thank you to Vertical Events and Canaccord for the opportunity to present DevEx's projects here today. Yeah, well, after Orthocell's presentation, everyone looks pretty wide awake. The people on the left look very pale after the wonderful photos of the surgery, and I'm pretty emotional after that as well, so bear with me. This is our usual disclaimer explaining everything about DevEx, and I urge you to read that at your leisure. We've got presentations outside and also on our website, so you can have a read of that at your leisure. So DevEx Resources, yeah, no, we're not in surgery, we're into exploration. We're focused on making a discovery. So that's our primary focus here, is to bring forth a discovery for our shareholders on several of our projects. To achieve that, what we've done is we've brought together a portfolio of exploration projects in several of Australia's really well-regarded, well-sought-after regions. These are emerging regions where recent discoveries have been made abound, and we're exploring these regions. We're very active on these grounds. So these projects have all got their own unique merits. All are very exciting, and for example, in Western Australia, with our Sovereign project, we're located in what's now starting to emerge as Australia's newest and what most likely will be one of the largest palladium regions in Australia, and we're starting to see that with Chalice Mining's discovery at Gonaville and what is now shaping up to be a very large nickel-copper PG province just on Perth's back doorstep. In New South Wales, we're exploring for porphyry copper gold deposits at our Junie project. This is Australia's heartland of porphyry copper gold deposits. These are very large metal-endowed deposits that are located in New South Wales in the Macquarie Arc, and we're exploring our own ground, and we've got drill rigs turning up in the next couple of weeks to start targeting on several really exciting looking drill hole intercepts from previous work. And that's not without mentioning our Nabarlek project in the Northern Territory. We've had that project for quite some time. Previously, DevEx Resources was called Uranium Equities, and we had a focus on uranium at the time. Well, uranium's been in the doldrums for a very long time, and two years ago, talking about uranium would receive quite a large yawn from most people that you talk about. But what we've got up there in Nabarlek is we're located in really one of Australia's heartland of uranium hard rock projects up through there. It's well endowed, and we have got granted tenure in and around and centred on the Nabarlek uranium mine, which in the 80s was well regarded as being Australia's highest grade uranium deposit, and with 24 million pounds of uranium mined from Nabarlek at a very high grade of 1.84% uranium. So we've been focused on that the last 6 months, seeing this uptick in the uranium price. We've been putting together all the data together, and what we've identified is a number of really attractive exploration targets in and around the existing Nabarlek uranium mine. And that's going to be something that we're going to be moving forward with over the next 12 months. So as a snapshot of DevEx Resources, as I said, we're an exploration company, 308 million shares on issue, currently trading at about 32 cents. And importantly, we've got about $16 million in the bank as of last quarter. That gives us the ability to bring forth a strong momentum of exploration campaign. You don't make discoveries without drilling, and that's what we're focused on all of these projects. And so that cash gives us that ability to keep that momentum pushing forward. And we're well supported naturally with our chairman, Tim Goyder, with 17% in the company. Tim is well renowned in the group now, following his success over the last couple of years with his involvement and nurturing with Chalice Mining, or Chalice Gold Mines then, and now Chalice Mining with the discovery of Gonaville. Also his involvement with the sort of from rags to riches with Liontown Resources, building that company up and the resources and the lithium resources at Kathleen Valley. The recipe for Tim is really about getting a cohort of explorers around him that are focused on exploration. If you went back 10 years ago, that's exactly what he was saying then. It's exactly what he was saying now. It's about that momentum and discovery, and that's the support. As I mentioned to Chrissy, I'm a geologist by trade, 25 years of experience, greenfields through to development, through to mining, and I've got a lot of experience in Western Australia and elsewhere. Also in the group is Chris Torrey, our chief geologist located in New South Wales. Chris is, again, a very experienced geologist with 35 years experience. What it really means for us right now with COVID is that with these barriers and these borders and these hard walls and the ability to move around is we can maintain that momentum with Chris and a local geological team in New South Wales pushing forward there, and myself and our team over here in Western Australia pushing forward on Sovereign, and likewise in the Northern Territory. So we're not going to break stride. We've got a number of targets and we're very active drilling. So just the devil in the detail, drilling down into the exact projects that we're talking about, starting in Western Australia, where our core focus is at Dallimore, and moving across to New South Wales and then eventually into the Territory. The image you see there is the magnetics, showing you regional magnetics and where our Sovereign project's located. So to the south, at the bottom of the picture, you're seeing Chalice's Gonaville intrusion. It's a magnetic anomaly, and then there's these magnetic red anomalies continuing north where Chalice are exploring along, and if you catch some of Alex's presentation from Chalice, you'll see what they're talking about with those targets. And they're exploring in their tenements abut our tenements to the north at Sovereign, where we both have an earn-in agreement with a bauxite explorer, ASQ, or Australian Silica Quartz Group, and then we have our own tenement on the eastern side where we're also exploring that granted tenement as well. So we're well located and well situated, with also Caspian Resources to the north of us who are also drilling nickel copper PG mineralisation. Where we now stand with Sovereign is that as of 8 months ago, nobody had drilled any holes into this project looking at the bedrock. There was bauxite that ASQ had been defining, but nobody had actually drilled through the bauxite horizon into the bedrock. We've drilled now 500 holes thereabouts, or a little bit more than that, and what we're now starting to define is a very large area of mafic, ultramafic intrusion. So there's the geologist in me, but that's the key to what's going on down to the south and to the north with both Caspian and Chalice. These intrusions are the ones that are bringing up these nickel, copper and platinum group elements, and what we're seeing is we're now defining with our air core drilling is that we've got a 12-kilometre long zone of mafic, ultramafic intrusions. Is it one intrusion? Is it multiple intrusions? It's too early days to know about that, but it's the right rocks, that's for sure. We can see that. We can see with the other people's announcements, we're starting to see both ultramafic and mafic rocks. We're starting to see that differentiation, and we've got work to do. So over that 12 kilometres, we know we've got a large-scale area to be exploring. We've got the right rocks. We've got the right age. We believe it's the right age, and we're well positioned. So what to do next? What we've commenced is we've commenced an excessive amount of ground EM that we're going to be doing over the next 3 months. Our primary purpose is to find that massive sulfide nickel copper PGE mineralisation somewhere amongst this intrusion or in multiple places around this intrusion. So we've got coverage, and that's what we've commenced on. We've got New Exco helping us out with that, and they're well renowned for that exploration work. Also, we've commenced drilling. We've got a diamond rig that's currently drilling to understand the geometry of this intrusion. We can see the 2 dimensions. What we need to do is understand what makes this intrusion tick, what does it look like at depth, and so we're currently diamond drilling to understand that geometry. So there's the rig. It's nice, it's clean, it's easy. We're on broadacre farms. We're not in forestry areas. We've got access agreements, and so we're moving ahead. In the meantime, as this EM progresses, any conductors that we start to see, they become really quite significant to us, and what we would be looking for is to move the rig straight away and start drilling those conductors as and when we see them. In New South Wales, as I mentioned, we're exploring for porphyry copper gold deposits, and this is a project that we've been active on over the last 2 years. And just to explain with the image you see, those that are not familiar, this is really the heartland of the copper gold terrain in Australia, with big deposits like Newcrest Cadia Ridgeway located to the north around Orange. This map shows you the who's who in the zoo in this area. What you're seeing there is Cadia Ridgeway's big monzonite intrusions that have dropped out a lot of gold, a lot of copper metal through that region. Off to the side on the Macquarie Arc, you're seeing also North Parks, again, a monzonite intrusion. What's significant about where we are located to the south is that in 2017, finally the survey started to map this area down where we are. If you go look at all the old maps, they all cut off before our tenements, and the reason why is they didn't realise the arc had continued down through there. Now the survey have age dated these monzonites which host Cadia, which host North Parks. They've age dated down there a monzonite that's exactly the same age as those 2 deposits, and that started off a pegging boom, and we've been lucky enough to peg a lot of ground out there 100% to us, and we're very much building up the momentum on exploration here. So the map you're seeing here again is magnetics. The importance of the magnetics is like to the north, just off our tenement, where Newmont's actively exploring this region. That Cobar monzonite, that's the monzonite that they aged dated to be the same as Cadia Ridgeway's monzonites and North Park. So it's really important, but what we've got is our own ground and we've got our own targets. We've drilled that magnetic anomaly at Nangus Road there, and we know we've got a monzonite, we've seen it, and then we've embarked on a program of air core drilling earlier this year, really broad-spaced air core drilling. So just zooming in on this Nangus Road prospect, what you're seeing there is on the left is the gold results. So we're seeing a 2-kilometre long gold anomaly from this broad-spaced air core drilling with associated copper anomalism. So, you know, like this is 400 by 200 metre reconnaissance air core drilling. So those that want to understand scale, and I guess those that feel enthused after the wonderful well-being and medical presentations today and feel like at the end of the next presentation, after Matt's presentation, you want to get out there. I'm going for a power walk. I don't know about you, but when you do, and if you feel like it, grab your coffee and cake, start in the lobby and head north. And so when I talk about scale, we just drilled a hole here in the lobby, and we've got really interesting anomalous copper and gold. And now we bring the rig and we go north by 400 metres. So if you want to go for a power walk, walk north and see where you end up, because I did it this morning and we end up in the ocean. So by the time you get right down on the beach and you're there, you're about 380 metres. So don't go 400 metres, you'll get your feet wet. Turn around and look at that sense of scale and you'll understand what I mean of the significance of this drilling and what it means and what lies between. Well, that's 2 traverses and we've got it over multiple traverses. So another 400 metres, you'll end up with 40 metres of water over your head. So just bearing that in mind when I'm talking about, we've now got 2 drill rigs coming up in the next 2 weeks. We're looking to do infill air core drilling. We're looking to do RC and diamond drilling into this prospect. It's big scale. It's got a big opportunity. And I'm really keen to see what goes on beneath. And that's not without more support from this air core drilling when we did geophysics. We're also seeing strong induced polarisation anomalies. For those that don't understand it, it's designed to find sulfides at depth. So just to show you one cross-section through that air core drilling, so they're 200 metres apart on an east-west traverse. We did IP geophysics looking for the potential for sulfides, which potentially could be copper-related, pyrite-related, and we're seeing this anomaly directly associated with that air core drilling that we're doing as reconnaissance. So we're getting a lot of layers of ingredients supporting this opportunity here, and so we're looking forward to seeing this drilling happening. Okay, so finishing up on the Northern Territory at Nabarlek project, you know, uranium's starting to pop back into the arena. As I mentioned, it was a big yawn a couple of years ago due to uranium price at somewhere like $24 a pound. Well, it's creeping up. I think it's somewhere around $48 a pound now, and everyone is starting to see what's going on. Well, Where we're located is we're located in the Alligator Rivers province. This is the heartland of the uranium, with over 500 million pounds of uranium defined from this region, both in resource and mining. And what we're located is around the historical Nabarlek uranium mine, where over 24 million pounds of uranium has been defined. Thanks, Chrissy, I heard the bell. What I'm saying is that we've put together a real portfolio of exploration targets targeting hard rock, high-grade uranium. We're talking about significant grades at Nabarlek and around the immediate pit, where we're seeing really good clusters of high-grade uranium mineralisation that is beckoning the drill rig to come back. So just to sort of explain, immediately south of the Nabarlek pit, you're looking at this area at Nabarlek South. It's 1 kilometre south along the structure. This is a three-dimensional view. Just to give you an idea of the cluster of uranium intercepts, and what we need to do is drill underneath these intercepts. We're seeing broad intercepts of 25 metres at 0.3 uranium with over 1% grade into that. So it's looking pretty good. We want to get a rig and start drilling these and the other targets immediately around it. And so what's it all about? It is all about the grade. This is the Nabarlek pit. This is a quick section of what Nabarlek looked like before they mined. The pit's mined it out, but you're talking about really high-grade intercepts up with 24 million pounds mined here. Intercepts like 19 metres at 13%. This is really super high grade. So, Christy, this is the sort of uranium project you want to be involved in. All right, so look, that's the timeline. I see Chrissy, she's giving me the urge, maybe a hug or something like that to come along. But all I can say is that we're very active and we've got the momentum to do it. So we've got drilling happening over the next 6 months, and we're going to be pretty busy. Thanks, Chrissy.
Good on you. Well done. And you're not allowed to bring a diamond drilling rig into that foyer there, okay? We're not allowed to throw around Coos balls. We certainly can't bring a diamond drilling rig in for you and then let you go 400 metres. I liked it. That was good. That was very good. I'm very, very impressed. I think you'll be impressed with our next talk as well, because it's going to, again, touch on something that will probably affect all of us at some stage. Again, I'm going to relate back to that Alzheimer's conference that I was doing on Monday in Perth. 472,000 people with Alzheimer's in Australia. That's how many people it's affecting at the moment. So there's a big call for, but there's also big business for something that can prevent it or can take away the symptoms. So EMTINs, the little buzzword, which may be able to help in some way, shape or form. And this fella here is going to tell us all about EMTINs. So NeuroScientific Biopharmaceuticals is the company. Matt Liddelow is the man with the information. Would you please make him very welcome?
Cheers. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be able to present the company to you today, a really exciting point in the company's existence. So NeuroScientific, we'll jump right into it. We're a drug development company based in Australia. We're working with peptide-based compounds that are highly selective, highly targeted with broad therapeutic potential. The investment opportunity for us is, or the value, is that we've got a novel lead compound that is a potential first-in-class therapeutic treatment for neurodegenerative conditions such as Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, etc. We have 2 streams of R&D research in a neurology program and also an ophthalmology program where we're treating degenerative conditions of the optic nerve. Our mode of action is quite unique in this space as a therapeutic for neurodegenerative conditions. Our science is built on a strong foundation of validated data. We use independent researchers. Sorry, can I stop that from keep going, flicking through? There we go. Yeah, going back to that point, our science is validated, is built on a strong foundation of validated data. We use independent, world-class research organisations to conduct our research. It's not done in-house, which adds to that validated point. And of real exciting interest and puts us in a unique place as far as licensing potential is the fact that our lead drug candidate actually has the potential for multiple treatment indications in the neurodegenerative space. It's not just locked into one particular disease. However, we do have lead data in Alzheimer's disease and in the ophthalmology program in glaucoma. And we're currently doing a bit of a circuit of conferences. This is our 3rd conference for the week. I'll take the next bit of data I'll show you is sort of adding a bit more explanation around his potential for multiple indications, which is what really gets pharmaceutical companies that we talk to really excited. So one element is our compound is based on or modelled on a human protein that's part of the innate immune system. It's a very complex protein called metallothionein, and it's well known to be involved in, especially in the brain, in protecting tissue and regenerating tissue. Problem is, it's actually produced after injury. So our lead compound, MDMB, is actually based on one particular part of that complex protein, and it's the part that actually stimulates that neuroprotection and neuroregeneration. We've optimized the compound to be a druggable compound, and another aspect is the actual target receptor of that it binds to, being what's called the LRP1 receptor. It's a multifunctional receptor. It depends on how it's activated to what response you actually get from it. But our compound is very specific for a particular region of that receptor, and that's how it's able to basically recreate what metallothionein does, but at a bit more of a focus in an activated level. So it basically stimulates survival pathways of cells that also lead to regeneration. And I'll just demonstrate again via this bit better explanation of that. In that what you're seeing there is just healthy neurons signaling away. When those neurons are damaged, you'll have retraction of those signaling processes and loss of ability to communicate. And that's effectively what you have in Alzheimer's disease. Neurons dying and going into decline. What we can do with MDMB, through that stimulation of that particular receptor, is activate survival pathways of the cell and regenerate those axons so that the functionality of the neuron can return and it can basically act as it always would. Now, just a snapshot of some of the data, just a whole collective package here before we go into actual indication or different diseases. We've repeatedly been able to stimulate survival in neuronal cells by more than 90%. We can promote regeneration, which is the regrowth of the axons, by more than 200% and sometimes up to 400%, depending on the cell type. We can increase synaptic density, which is verification that those regenerated axons are actually working and signaling and sending communication. And we've been able to do that by more than 10 times in comparison to other drugs, or a particular other drug. And it crosses the blood-brain barrier, which is obviously important if you're trying to treat neurodegenerative diseases. It's got to get into the brain. Our current pipeline is quite active. We've got lead indications in our neurology R&D program in Alzheimer's disease, which is closely followed by multiple sclerosis, and we've got some very exciting news coming up to talk about over the next, well, very soon, about multiple sclerosis and accelerating that program. And in ophthalmology, our lead indication is in glaucoma, but we are doing some other studies there as well. So turning our focus to specific diseases now, and the data to support the use of MDMB in those diseases. In Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common neurodegenerative disease and the most severe form of dementia, MDMB treatment was able to improve that condition by more than 80% in the gold standard animal model, and also significantly reduced the inflammatory effect that contributes to the onset of some of the symptoms of the disease. In multiple sclerosis, which is the second most common neurodegenerative disease, and in separating it from the action of or how Alzheimer's is the pathology of Alzheimer's disease, it's more related to a neuroinflammatory response or immune processes that break down what's called the myelin sheath around axons, and then you get that cell decline and breakdown of the cells. So there's an inflammatory component of this that's very different to what happens in other neurodegenerative diseases. With MDMB, we're able to increase that, stimulate the increase of that myelin production that actually contributes to that sheath, and also as well as the protective aspect and the regenerative aspect of the axons. And in recently released data, which was a first for us, we've always had a core focus of looking in the brain, obviously, but we took a step outside of that in multiple sclerosis and looked at systemic immune responses, which are T cells and B cells, and we were able to demonstrate that we actually have an effect on downregulating some of the inflammatory processes directly related to the onset of multiple sclerosis. And again, there's more information to come out about that as we take a deeper dive into how that whole process is happening. And turning to glaucoma in our ophthalmology program. Glaucoma affects a huge part of the general population globally. Second most common cause of irreversible blindness in the world, second only to cataracts. And that intraocular pressure is one of the contributing reasons, but not the only, to the actual disease condition. But effectively what happens is you get the retinal cells at the back of the eye that form the optic nerve, and the optic nerve is what takes the visual information from your eye to your brain. Those cells are actually damaged in the process of glaucoma, and that is basically the onset of the blindness that is attributed to the disease. The studies, our ophthalmology program was built on a foundation of studies that were completed with metallothionein. In particular, I've got, you can see there in just here, a rat transection model in which of very low therapeutic dose, one single therapeutic dose, when the optic nerve has been transected, it had a nice solid regrowth. And that led us to, first of all, make sure that EMPTN-B inocular tissue could penetrate to the back of the eye and get to the areas where it needs to be to actually exert a similar effect to what was achieved with metallothionein, which is this data here, where we're actually able to show really impressive tissue penetration. And then from there, we followed that up with a severe, acute severe version of glaucoma in a large animal, in a pig model of glaucoma, and a pig model because pig eyes are much more similar than rodents to the human eye, so therefore there is that translational aspect that you can take into the clinic with the knowledge that you get out of a study in an eye that's much more structurally similar to human. And you can see untreated versus treated, where the untreated tissue samples there have just basically been obliterated from the pressure, whereas the treated tissue you can see has maintained its structural integrity. Moving on to a bit more of a corporate overview of the company. We IPO'd on the ASX in 2018. We've currently got 13 million cash on hand, which is enough funding to do what we need to do over the next couple of years. We intend to execute on 2 phase 1 clinical trials next year. Target milestones for us, which we've sort of had to push one of them back a little bit, which is the start of the first phase 1 study. But what we currently expect to do is Q4 finish off the safety studies to then allow us in first quarter of Q1 or Q1 2022 to actually initiate our very first phase 1 clinical study for our neurology program. So again, very exciting time for us at the company to be able to do that. You only get to cross that threshold once as a company. And we appreciate all the patience of shareholders with us getting there, but we are on the cusp of doing it, down to the very final studies that need to be completed to be able to allow us to make that transition. And we're actually having this at the same pace. We are developing our ophthalmology program and expect to do our first phase 1 study in glaucoma patients by Q2 next year as well. The board of NeuroScientific is composed of a good mix of technical capabilities and capital markets experience. Of note, we recently appointed Paul Rennie as non-executive chairman, and Paul is mostly associated with being the founder of successful biotech company Paradigm Biopharmaceuticals. It's been a fantastic addition to our board. And we recently also expanded our management team in preparation for executing on our clinical development phase of the business in appointing Dougal Thring As Vice President of Clinical Development, he's ex-Linear Medical, so over 12 years experience in clinical studies. And Dr. Alexandra Heaton, who's here today as well, as our Director of Operations. And so, in summary, and to conclude, we are a very exciting company, right on the cusp of making the transition into clinical development next year. And we're a great investment opportunity with a product that has a lot of potential. And it's like I said, it's a very exciting time to actually be involved right now, and a good opportunity if you choose to invest. And thank you very much.
Good on you, Matt. Matt Liddelow, NeuroScientific, Biopharmaceuticals. Thank you very much, sir. We are going to take a half-hour break. That's our first 6. We've got 12 more to go. And as you go out there today, have a think of the conversation of the ABC this morning, discussing tea. What sort of a tea drinker are you? What effect does it have on your personality when you come back in this room? Or maybe you're a straight coffee